Jesus. It's not a medieval text. This is one of the prime figures of liberalism in the Victorian era in Britain, by which and through which most other subsequent theorists take their liberalism from. He actually says in that manuscript that kill them. Yes, he says kill them, kill them. If you have to kill many of them, kill them. In other words, it seems to me, and Immanuel Kant has some similar sayings, it seems to me that the question we should be asking is not whether Islam allows apostasy law, it's whether liberalism allows apostasy law. Because actually, when we look at the primary source materials of the most regarded liberal theorists, the highest, the founding fathers of liberalism, it would seem that a social contract theory could in fact facilitate of a kind of apostasy law, right? That's from a liberal perspective. Islam is something quite similar in many ways, but has some fundamental differences. So, Hudayfa ibn Yaman, who's one of the Prophet's companions, he had a list of people who are munafiqun. And those list of people were people who had rejected Islam. They were not Muslims. The Quran says, إِنَّ الْمُنَافِقِينَ فِي الدَّرْكِ الْأَسْفَلِ مِنَ النَّارِ. That certainly the hypocrites are in the lowest pit of the hellfire. They are not Muslims. They are not believers. They are not mu'mins. Yes? Yet, there was no apostasy punishment applied to those individuals. There was no apostasy thing applied to them. Why? Because it regarded to personal belief. So I'll be unequivocal in saying this. That which regards to personal belief is different from that which is expressed publicly, and thereby, from a liberal perspective, before it even becomes an Islamic one, ruptures the social contract. Now, the question is it fair and is it okay, is it possible, is it conceivable in a liberal state, bearing in mind social contract theory, to have these laws? And therefore, can a liberal state slip into a kind of nationalistic state, intolerant state? The answer is, unfortunately, yes. That is the elasticity of liberalism. Liberalism, because of the tensions between the primacy of individual versus the universality of law, could sway in either one of the two directions. Could either become very much libertarian in the sense that, we don't even allow, think of it this way, yeah? Libertarians would argue, why do we have seatbelt laws? Yeah? We have seatbelt laws. When you have to go in your car, you have to put on a seatbelt, don't you? But why do you have to put on a seatbelt? A libertarian would argue, this is a paternalism. They'll say it's like the state is acting as your parent now. But it's not to do, even if I hurt myself, it's not your business if I hurt myself. Someone could argue, a libertarian would definitely argue, that even if I hurt myself in the car and I create a crash, I'm not harming anyone else by doing this. Why are you telling me what to do? So I'm allowed to drink alcohol. Think about this, because this is the ignorance of some people of their own philosophy, right? I'm allowed to drink alcohol, yeah, and in some places smoke weed, and have, unlimited amount of sexual partners, polyandry, and that could cause problems for myself, sexual problems. All of that is permissible, but I have to put on a seatbelt. Does that sound reasonable to you? Seriously, think about it. I'm allowed to compete in mixed martial arts, where I could injure someone and die. I could I could play rugby, but I have to put on the seatbelt. What kind of nonsense is this? Think about it. It doesn't make any sense. Let's be honest about this, yeah? Why is the state telling us you have to put on the seatbelt? If I don't put on the seatbelt, will I harm anyone else? Think about it. Am I going to harm I'll harm myself. Yes, but I'm not going to harm anyone else by not putting my seatbelt. Yeah, but if I hit the... No. My point is this. My point is that liberal philosophy can go in two different ways, yeah? You have on the left side, let's say for the sake of argument, an extreme libertarianism, where we don't want the state to get involved in any matter, yeah? Like, for example, we shouldn't have seatbelt laws. That's one side. On the other side is where liberal philosophers will say, actually, there should be restriction, and that should be enforced through the context of social contract theory into the universality of law, which should be applicable on the individual. Law should be applied. And John Stuart Mill says something very interesting. You know what he says? He says, for instance, he goes, if a husband and wife, they have sex in public, is that harming anyone else? You could argue no. Not physically harming anyone. If for example, not to point anyone out, someone brings his wife and, you know, in the park in the middle here, sorry to say, has sex with her, takes trousers off, yeah, and all of those things, sorry to say, Yani. Is that going to harm anyone? No, they're having sex, you can decide to leave. You can go. You don't have to look at it. You don't need to be offended by it. Why is that censored? Yes? You could argue this, yep. No, I understand, it's children and all that, but we can have an area where they can do it. No problem. We can have an adult park, why not? Right. Pardon? Yeah, no, I'm just, yeah, I agree with you. I agree with this point, yes. I'm not telling you should, I agree with your point. Yes, yes. My friend, I agree with you, yes. But I'm saying, so John Stuart Mill said, look, there's some things, this is what he said, there's some things which tease our sensibilities. We have a culture, and that's not acceptable in our culture. And he says, therefore, the universality of law and the social contract should put restriction. So here, John Stuart Mill is talking about, on liberty, in his book, he's saying that there are certain things which should not be accessible for people, i.e. having sex with your wife in public spheres, or your husband, yes? So the question is, now here's the real question, what should be allowed to be done in publicly without fear of reprisal or otherwise a fear of a consequence from the law? This is a thing that liberals struggle with. That's why you have different schools of thought within liberalism, and that's why I'm talking about elasticity of liberalism. Yeah, it's not something which, okay, I'm a liberal now. Now, the question is, when they come to us, this is what I'm going to say to everyone, to answer your question, sorry, yeah? When they come to us and say, look, you need to modernize. What do they say? They say, you need to modernize. Muslims, you know, you need to modernize. What do you mean? Come on, tell me, white man, what do you mean by, sorry,
Westernize.
Well, yeah, what do you mean by modernize? I want to know what you mean, yeah? Okay, he'll say, look, and by the way, when I say white man, I'm not talking about, you know, I'm talking about,
Western.
Yeah, the Western man. What do you mean? What do you mean by it? All right, I'll tell you what you mean. You mean become more liberal, because that is the dominant ethic in the Western world, yes? Okay, now I'm liberal. I've embraced liberalism. Brother, okay, what do we do? Let's go look at the liberal books. Let's look at the works of John Locke and John Stuart Mill and Rousseau. Pardon?
If I go to Saudi Arabia, yeah?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I have to follow
I'm not an ambassador for Saudi Arabia. Yes, I agree with you. Wallahi, I don't...
follow the rules of the country.
Yeah, I agree with this point. Yeah, I agree with that point. Yeah, I agree with
Finish your point.
Yeah, sorry, going back. I'm a liberal now, yeah? So yes, I've embraced liberalism. Let's go to the books of the liberals. So we find within the books of the liberals, you have a spectrum of understanding of to what the main question is, to what extent should the government intervene? And you don't have one answer for that. You have 10 answers from 10 different liberal thinkers. Yes? And so here's what I'm saying to you is that going back to apostasy law, yeah, going back to apostasy law, I'll come to you, I'll speak after because I can't. Yes, I agree. I agree with you, brother. Yes. We have to have rules. Yes, that's my argument. I agree with you. Yes, I agree with you. Yeah, the man made a good point there. You must have rules, otherwise people will be chaos, anarchy. He's right. But the question is this. Yeah, think about it. Have you ever thought about this before? They talk about human rights. So, to what extent can a liberal state institutionalize a law, universalize it, and apply a death penalty for those who don't go against it? Well, according to John Locke, according to John Stuart Mill, according to Immanuel Kant, according to John Rousseau, according to almost even Voltaire, I believe as well, according to almost every liberal, they have full right to do that because of the social contract. Therefore, don't tell me about liberalism. I mean, that's the issue here. They come with a false pretense. They don't even know their own philosophy. That's the issue. They don't even know their own philosophy. That's why America gets away with death penalties. They have a death penalty in America. It's not against liberalism to have a death penalty. It's not against it.
Can you ask?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You might be able to answer.
Yes, sir.
How did the government come about?
That's a political question. If you're asking about Parliament, obviously going back to Charles II and his, but we don't want to go in this country. There's a whole tradition, isn't it? If you want to go back to William II, William I, William the Conqueror, the 1066. I don't know how far back you want to take this. We can talk after. It's a long. Where do I go?
No.
Edgar of Etheling. Or should I go back to the Normans? I don't know. So here, ladies and gentlemen, don't be deceived. Is my point. When you ask, this is the presupposition which we have to investigate. Because when they say human rights, what do they actually mean? They mean 1948 Convention of Human Rights that was put in place after World War II. That's what they mean, right? All right, so that convention, if you read it, it's got 30 articles. It's got 30 different points. 30 different points. In every one of those 30 different points, you have the right of this, the right of that, the right of this, the right of that. Now,
There's 5 basic human rights. Right to live, right to shelter, right to water, right to food, and I think the right to something.
here's my criticism of the whole thing. I've got a criticism of the whole thing. I've got a criticism. Do you know when you tell someone you've got a right to do something? If I tell you, brother, you have the right to do this, you know? Do you know what it's telling you to do? To be entitled. That's what it's telling you to be, right? So it's a negative way of asserting something. I say, look, you have this right. It means you are entitled to this. The question is, why does the UN Declaration of Human Rights 1948 not have anything on responsibilities? Because by telling you have a right, it's telling you what you deserve, but it's not telling you what you need to do. And that's the problem with a lot of the rights culture that we have at the moment. You have the right to this, you have the right to that. You have a child has a right to education, but a teacher does not have a responsibility to teach. How does that even work? You need to counterbalance rights with responsibilities. That is a communitarian criticism which has been made of liberal human rights culture. Look, I want to wrap up by saying, in the context of the West, we don't believe in, if someone changes their religion, yes, whatever. Oh, hi. You're okay.
Hello there.
We don't care if they're Muslim. We don't go there. Even in the context of an Islamic state, we don't care about personal beliefs. The extent to which we care about personal beliefs is the extent to which it's connected with concepts of rupturing a pre-existing social contract which is put in place with the permission, yes, of that individual, because they have to do bay'ah, they have to pledge allegiance, they have to give legitimacy to that state. So, in sum, I would say the punitive laws of Islam, and this is my final statement. Every single punitive law in Islam, the death penalty, what they call the ridda punishment, every single one of them can be justified not Islamically through liberalism and through the social contract. Yes, we would be going away from libertarianism, but you can justify it through the universality of law. So it's not even a liberal critique of Islam if we're honest with ourselves, and therefore it has no moral or ethical basis. It's just a subjective value judgment of 21st century complexion. Should you pray?
Yeah, let's go.